Hopefully, everyone who's planning on attending tonight will make it. Apparently, the URL that was sent out was the URL for the wrong class. I just sent out a correction, which everyone should get. And if you're here, obviously you figured it out or received the correction. And if you're not, hopefully you're watching this on the recording and you don't miss too much. Welcome, everybody. This is 6 weeks to the App Store. My name is Mark Lassoff. Most of you have taken an online live class with me before, but if you haven't, let me explain basically how these courses work. These online live courses, we meet in this class once a week, and when we meet, I'll be doing a lecture. That lecture is recorded, and when we finish the lecture, at some point within about 24 hours, I send out a homework assignment which basically helps you understand or recap what I did in the lecture, helps you advance on your project, and moves you towards the goal. In this case, of getting a application into the App Store, or at least App Store ready. You don't necessarily have to put it in the App Store if you don't want to. Um, this is a beginner's course, and you will be provided with most of what you need to know and will move very, very quickly. However, you probably will find it beneficial if you are somewhat familiar with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. If you are a club member, you have access to pre-recorded versions of those courses. Our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript courses are among our most successful with I think about 25,000 enrollees. So you're more than welcome to check those to review. If you're not a club member and just taking the course, hopefully you have those and you can benefit either with what knowledge you have or not. As we go on with the course during the live lectures, if you attend live, please feel free to use the chat pod. That's part of the GoToTraining software. I monitor that during class, so you're more than welcome to put comments, questions, etc. on there. Be aware there's a drop down at the bottom, which indicates whether you're talking to the whole audience or just me. So just be careful that setting is correct before you type some type of comment. I normally don't use the webcam for the course just because it tends to slow things down quite a bit. And I think speed is more important than seeing my pretty face. If you're curious as to what I look like, I'll show you a picture at some point, or you've probably seen one on some of our promotional material. So the purpose of this class is to quickly go through what it takes some to get a application that is ready to go into the App Store. Now, there's a couple of different ways of doing that. You can build what are called native apps. And if you build native apps, you're building directly using the tools and operating system that the particular target platform uses. So if you're building an Android app, then you are building in Java. If you are building an iOS app, then you're building in Objective-C. If you're building a Windows app, you're building in .NET. Now, for people who don't want to learn three languages or need to have an app that's easily distributable to all the platforms, there is hybrid apps. And that's what we're going to be working on, hybrid apps. And we're going to use the PhoneGap library, which is pretty easy to use. And it's going to be, I think, a pretty satisfying experience because in the end, you're going to be able to run your apps on your mobile device without much difficulty. I will be emailing the class each week, sometime within 24 hours of the lecture with the information you need for that week. Homework assignments, you can email me or unless I otherwise specify. Um, and if you have any questions, as always, let me know. Usually in the first class, I give everyone who's attending live, we've got a pretty good crowd tonight, a chance to introduce themselves real quickly. So hopefully you have your mic and your speakers ready. And so I'm just going to go down the list and ask everyone to real quickly introduce themselves. You might want to say kind of why you're here, why you just thought this class would be interesting, and anything else about you that we need to know. If you're an experienced developer, that's great. If this is your first time, that's great too. Kind of let us know where you stand and why you took the class, and maybe something interesting about you that is not necessarily class related. Let's see. So I'm going to start with Ralph. Okay, yeah, Deb, that's no problem. Deb, if you want to just type
Oh,
up your little intro, you can do that. Ralph Miller, you want to get us started here? You've done this before.
sure. Yeah. I've had a lot of experience programming HTML, CSS. I've bought a couple of your courses, and one of the reasons I want to do the live one is just so that I have a little more motivation to get the homework done. And I have some ideas for App Store, or app development, and figured, hey, why not do it myself? So.
And yeah, that is something about the live. That's why we offer both live and pre-recorded courses. Is knowing that someone's actually going to be checking your homework and knowing whether you did it or not is sometimes motivation to get it done. All right, thank you, Ralph. Nicole, you mic'd up.
I'm on my computer mic, so hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, I've wanted to learn programming probably for about the last 10 years, since I was in school for traditional Chinese medicine and was trying to study herbs, which has all these classes of interconnected bits of information, and you have to kind of connect them all together. And I was not able to find a good flashcard app for the iOS that did what I wanted. So I've kind of had in the back of my mind to make this app for a good 10 years now. Um, as far as background in programming, I did a little bit of programming back in high school math class on the old VAXes using BASIC. I'm even a little bit older than you are, Mark. So you probably remember those times. And I really enjoyed it. But at the time, programming was not cool, and it was particularly not cool for girls. So I did not go further. And then more recently, a little more than 10 years ago, I did some HTML and just the barest beginnings of CSS when I was doing graphic design. So anyway, I have the kind of mind that does well with this sort of thing, and so I'm actually considering kind of a career switch at this point, and it's very possible that I might make a move to programming. So.
Very cool. Well, I will say that's the first time I've been used as the baseline for old, but that's fine.
Well, I mean, you said in other classes how old you are, and I'm like, no, he's not old, so
Yeah, I just turned 40 last month, so, well, now
you're a
2 months
baby.
ago. Yeah, well, we'll see about that. Thanks, Nicole. Great intro.
Thanks.
And don't take offense, by the way. I generally keep y'all's mics muted, and that's only because a lot of background noise can be very distracting, especially when I'm going through the activities in the lecture. So it's not offensive. And if you want to say something, you're always welcome to unmute your mic and go ahead and talk. Joel, are you able to introduce yourself? You mic'd up and ready to go?
If I get this mic off mute, hopefully. Uh, I'm a developer. I'm older than she is even. And although it's the first time I've heard of, uh, it's been a long time since I programmed on something like she started on. But I've been a developer for the last number of years in basically medical areas and for the Veterans Administration. But I'm done a little bit towards doing mobile, but I haven't. Uh, the one area, if people are interested in basically all of the different mobiles they might look into, is Embarcadero's Rad Studio, which can do native code in almost any of those as well. I've done Delphi programming under that for a lot of years as well, since Delphi 1. But I I've got you beat. I'm 71, so that's not a matter. But I'm very interested in the course. I enjoyed the course you did the last few weeks as well.
Well, thanks, Joel. And you're not alone in being in the more seasoned age group. You have contemporaries. I won't put them out, but you have contemporaries in this class, so that's all good. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and I'm sure your experience is going to be a benefit to everybody. Deb doesn't have a microphone, but I'll just introduce her briefly. Deb's from New York and just added curious about programming apps for the web and what you might be able to do with them. Additionally, these classes, as Ralph said, are very motivational. And Deb lives in New York City, right, Deb? You're in Queens, if I remember correctly. And yeah, Deb is one of our returning students. Well, I'm glad you're here. Okay, Brad, can you do you have the ability to introduce yourself? Are you mic'd up?
I think so,
Yep, I
if you
can
can
hear
hear
you.
me.
Go ahead and give us a quick
Uh,
introduction.
Alrighty then. I started out programming back in about 1979, I guess it was, on the old Radio Shack TRS-80 computers, and always had a love for it. I do own my own company currently, and I'm looking to further gain further knowledge than what I already have, just to further my skill set.
Okay, super. Well, we've got two Brads in the class. Brad L. Brad, where were you from?
I'm from British Columbia, Canada.
British Columbia. So we've got an international class this time. That's exciting. And so Brad B, Brad Bookser, are you mic'd up?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you fine. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
My name is Brad Bookser. I'm a technology director at a private high school in San Diego. I've been doing web development for about 10 years, and I'm trying to gain more knowledge in the mobile app development area. So I thought this would be a good course. I've actually attended one of your sessions at, I think it was at ISTE or one of the conferences, which I really enjoyed. So I thought I'd take this here.
Oh, super! Yeah, I've been everywhere.
Yeah.
ISTE and a number of other. I'm actually between conferences now. I just got home last night from the National Association of Broadcasters conference, and next week I'll be going to Minnesota for Mini WebCon.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and I've got some appearances in California coming up as well. And we'll post those on the website if they're open to the public. I think my next one's after that is HTML5. The National HTML5 conference in San Francisco. Well, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you came to my in-person session. And I'm going to go ahead and mute microphones again. And I don't know if Alex is mic'd up. Alex, do you have a microphone or not? Okay, Alex doesn't have a mic. Alex is auditing, but I'll introduce you if that's okay. Alex is a Learn to Program employee. She is our graphic designer, and all of the artwork you see in advertisements, sometimes in tutorials, the motion graphics you see are all Alex's work. Alex has been with us for about a year and does really, really excellent work. Alex moved to Connecticut. Well, I can do a pretty long intro for Alex. Alex moved to Connecticut just about a year ago after graduating from Rochester Institute of Technology with a degree in animation. How did I do, Alex? You can let me know in the chat if I got anything wrong. All right. So onward and here we go. So like I said, we're going to be using the Phone Gap library. For those of you who are watching this recorded after the fact, and or if you're rewatching it because you feel like you missed something during class, PhoneGap.com is going to be your friend during this class. Now, PhoneGap is a library that enables you to basically take an application that's written in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and wrap it with PhoneGap. And what I mean by wrap it is simply to surround it with the PhoneGap libraries, which then take that application and allow you to deploy it to a number of mobile platforms. Now, those mobile platforms vary at different times depending on what PhoneGap is currently supporting, but it's always going to include iOS. Here's the current list: iOS, Android, Windows, and Palm. Was that Palm or BlackBerry? Sorry, and a couple of others that you'll never use. There's even some support out there for things like creating Chrome apps. So there's a lot of good support for PhoneGap applications. It's pretty much the standard way to do hybrid applications. So what you're going to do, if you haven't yet, is I know a couple of you emailed me beforehand and said, "Hey, what do I need to install?" Is if you go to the install PhoneGap. Now, there's a prerequisite to this, and you'll see this. It says ensure you have Node.js installed. So first thing you'll do, if you don't, is install Node.js. That's just a matter of basically clicking this install button It'll download, you'll install it like anything else. You don't have to really even touch it after that. The install takes a little bit of time, so just allow it to install on your machine. There's a PC version, there's a Mac version. Don't even worry about what it does. Just realize that you need it to install PhoneGap. Once you've installed Node, follow the instructions here. These are command line instructions. So in the Windows command line, yeah, or the Mac command line, the commands you'll enter are the same. So you'll just enter exactly what it says here: sudo npm install-g PhoneGap. Now, once you're installing PhoneGap, it'll take a while to download all the libraries and stuff, and you'll kind of see it go through the process inside your command line. I wouldn't do this during the class. Do this afterwards. It's actually part of your homework is to get PhoneGap installed and running. And you can learn more about the PhoneGap command line within the instructions here, which is PhoneGap command line interface. And there's a whole list of instructions as far as what to do to create your applications and test them. I'm going to give you this page in the instructions as well tonight to in your homework as well to help create your app. So this is the whole reference for the command line. It's part of the docs here at PhoneGap, but the easier version is right here in this install page that I showed you before. Just do this. And the other thing you'll have to do, and this is not something unfortunately I can show you how to do, but it's part of your individual system, is create path entries to the PhoneGap libraries. And what I mean by that is when I type PhoneGap in my command line, it has to know where is that PhoneGap command on my computer in order to execute the command. So you notice I typed PhoneGap-version. I should be able to do that from anywhere on my computer, even though PhoneGap is not in the folder where I'm currently located. So you may struggle with the path a little bit. I'm available to help you. Feel free to shoot me an email if you're having trouble setting up your path. It's actually a little easier on a PC than a Mac, but the path indicates where does it look for various commands that you're entering. Because this is not where I have PhoneGap installed. I don't, be honest, I have PhoneGap installed in some other folder. Let's see here. I can actually locate it like this. So I have my PhoneGap folder, it looks like right here, which you can see in this path here is kind of a mess, but this is actually the wrong one. I have several versions of the PhoneGap folder. Let's see if I can find the right one. So in any ways, the point is it doesn't exist kind of in the folder where I'm working. So I think this is it. Nope, missed it again. So anyways, the PhoneGap folder is somewhere on my system, and I can find that PhoneGap folder and use the PhoneGap commands from anywhere because it's an actual path on my system. So what I do is I set a system variable, and again I can help you walk through that process. But what we've done is basically set an environment variable. It says, hey, you need to look in the folder that has PhoneGap for this. So just for example, if I type in the command line echo path, or is it echo ah, echo $path, all of these folders here are places where it looks for commands that I enter in the command line. Now, if this is confusing to you, don't worry too much about it. But you can see here I've got various entries in the command line that are needed, so it can find exactly what it's looking for when I type PhoneGap, or if it's looking for Android commands, etc. And there's also some tutorials that can walk you through that. So don't stress that too much, but you might need to do that if everything's not set up on your system. All right, so let's go ahead and let me move to kind of the more comprehensive documents. So in order to use PhoneGap, the first thing we need to do is create an application. So once we have PhoneGap installed, you'll notice that the instructions here are pretty straightforward. Now, you'll notice too that the constructions use the word Cordova. And if I type Cordova version here, Cordova and PhoneGap are the same thing. PhoneGap is Adobe's version, and Cordova is the free version. They're both free, but it's kind of the open source version. It doesn't really matter which you use; everything's the same. So where I can type Cordova version, I can also type PhoneGap and get the same response. I have a slightly different version of PhoneGap on my machine than Cordova. That's because of another environment that I use that I'll show you a little bit later. So here it shows you how to create a application in Cordova. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on my desktop here a new folder, and I'm going to call this Hello World in PhoneGap, or just Hello World. And this will be where I'm going to create my Hello World in PhoneGap application. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to move to that folder. So CD desktop, and then on the desktop, I've got the Hello World folder. So now you'll see it indicates right here, Hello World, indicating I'm in this folder. Now, I could have also done that in the GUI. I'm going to close this up. Watch this. In a Mac, I'm just going to drag this folder over my terminal like that, and that's going to open my terminal to that folder. The PC, you'll have to navigate using CD and the CD command to change directory, but it's the same idea. So once I'm in the PhoneGap folder, and again, you may struggle with this the first time, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and create my application. So I'm going to type Cordova, create, and I'm actually doing this exact example right here. Hello. So Cordova create is the command. Hello is a high-level name for the application that I'm creating. Now, the next com.example.hello is the package name, and that's usually like a reverse URL. So I might do like tv.learntoprogram, since we're learntoprogram.tv, dot hello, and then hello world. So what's going to happen here is it's going to go ahead and create that application, and it tells me it just created that app. So it says creating a new Cordova project with name Hello World and ID tv.learntoprogram.hello at location users Mark Lassoff desktop Hello World hello. So if we look in the Hello World folder right now, it's got this app in here called Hello, right? That's what we told it. If you look at the command that we typed, our arbitrary name was Hello. This was the package. This is kind of our name for the app. Now in here, it's created a bunch of folders. So when I type this command, it created all of these folders. One of these folders is the www folder. And that www folder is where the actual application will be written. Ralph, you like that trick with dragging it to the terminal icon, huh? That's everyone always likes that little trick, and nobody knows it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the www folder, and what you're going to see in here is a pretty traditional web application. We've got index.html, which is the main page. We've got a configuration XML, which I'll talk about. A folder for our CSS, which is the design. A folder for our images, and a folder for our JavaScript. And essentially what it did was it actually put in here all of this content, which is a sample application that's already built so we can test everything out. And matter of fact, if I double click on index.html, or if I just move it into my web browser, you can kind of see what the sample application looks like. Because these are HTML apps, we can do some level of testing in the web browser. And so here you can see the title screen. So we've created the application. Now, also in here, we've got a merges folder, which is empty at first, a platforms folder, also empty at first, and a plugins folder, also empty at first. So it's created the skeleton of this application. And as you go through the homework, you'll also do this yourself. It's not very difficult once you have everything configured correctly. So now we've got to tell it which platforms do we want to distribute to. And unfortunately, your machine that you're running on has to support the SDKs for the individual apps. They will not let you, and this is due to Apple's licensing, for example, make an iOS app if you're using a Windows machine. Now, there are some ways around this that I'll show you, but if you're using the tools yourself, these are the limitations. And that's because your machine has to support the specific SDK or software development kit. They will not let you build a Windows 8 app from a PC, from a Mac. You can build, however, an Android or Amazon Fire OS from either machine. So if I want to add the Android platform, that's the one I usually use as an example because it's the one that runs on both. I'm going to issue the command Cordova platform add Android. And oh, I'm in the wrong folder here. I need to go into hello, right? Because that's the project folder. So now I'm in this folder in my command line. Everyone sees that? This is the hello folder. This is the hello in the command line. So I'm actually using the command line in that folder. Now, if you haven't used the command line before, I recommend you get used to it. You might even want to take my course, Absolute Programming for Absolute Beginners, because we do a lot of command line in that class. And don't worry, by the way, once you've taken a class once, you can take it again anytime you want. You never have to pay for it if you're a club member. So recommend that you do that. And if you're not a club member, you still get to retake the course. So don't stress too much if you don't completely understand something or miss something. All right, so here we go. Let's go ahead and now run that command to add Android. So Cordova platform add Android is the command. Now I'm in the folder with the application. Here we go. And it says it's creating the Android project. Takes a few moments. Now I'm on a Mac, so I'm limited to, right, iOS, Amazon, Android, BlackBerry, and Firefox OS. On a PC, you've got Windows, I think it's Windows Mobile 7, Windows Mobile 8, Windows 8, Amazon Fire iOS, Android, BlackBerry 10, and Firefox OS. So many of them are common, but basically due to licensing agreements, you can only do one or the other. Now, like I said, I'm going to show you a little way around that coming up here pretty soon. All right, so now if we look in the platforms folder, it's added this Android folder in here. And in here is basically everything it needs to make a native Android application and run it. So it will create here a native Android application because it has that folder. And we can add other platforms at the same time. Like, for example, the Amazon platform add. Let's add the, well, for mine, I can do iOS because I have a Mac. So it's now downloading the iOS platform. And what you'll see here in a minute, unless it errors for some unforeseen reason, is the iOS folder added. And that'll allow us to create a native iOS application here on the Mac. Now, the idea here is and this is, I guess, taking some time to do download, which is fine. There we go. So there's everything we need for an iOS app. But the idea here is we'll build the application here in the www folder, and we'll take that application we built in the www folder, and then using the PhoneGap tool, we'll be able to deploy it to Android and iOS. And heck, why not? Let's add the Amazon Fire. Not sure if I'm going to have that one available. I don't have the absolute latest version of PhoneGap on my machine, but let's try it. Yep, I don't have that one available. So let's just do BlackBerry 10. We'll pretend that BlackBerry is a player. Oh, I'm missing a, darn it. Add Amazon Fire. Helps if I actually type the whole command. I apologize. I'm making some errors here because I'm on about 3.5 hours sleep when I got back from Vegas very late last night. Yeah, so it's actually I don't have what I need for the Amazon one. Let's try the BlackBerry one. It's kind of what I suspected. I came back very late last night, so from Las Vegas from the conference. Hopefully, it's not affecting my performance too much. There we go. All right, so now it's trying to download BlackBerry. I don't have what I need for that one either. But basically, I can go through the instructions here, and it'll show me exactly what I need to download these. Don't worry too much about that. Nicole, BlackBerry's been phased out. I thought it was still popular in the business and financial world. So I actually heard an interview today on CNBC or Fox about with the CEO of BlackBerry. They're trying to hang on, but it's kind of a difficult world for them right now. They've lost a lot of popularity. All right. In any case, let's continue here with just what we've got. It's fine. We've got this iOS. We've got the Android. So just for good measure, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to bring up the HTML in a text editor. So this is the HTML that comes out of the package. Now with this HTML, there's a lot here just for the sample app, which is all right here. And it's actually not needed. It's only needed for the sample app. What I'm going to do actually is not change this yet, and I'll come back and change this on my own. You can just put in this in the www folder that's part of your application any HTML, CSS, and JavaScript you want. You don't have to use this beginning of this application that they provide you as a starting point. I see the little there's a little banter going on about good old Canada, BlackBerry, Bieber, and Rob Ford. Okay, you also gave us though Brian Adams, and I like him. All right. Anyway, so yeah, a little goofy tonight. So let's go ahead and now let's actually run one of these applications and see what happens. So if you go further down in the instructions, after you've added platforms, and it gives you, all the instructions here, we can build the app. So here where it says Cordova build, what it does is it goes through a process to build the app. And here it says preparing iOS project, preparing Android project, compiling app. So it's building the app on all of the platforms that I have. So it's going to take just a moment or two to finish compiling, but it's basically building the native app now based on the sample HTML app that it has. So you do platform Android compiled. That's great. And soon it'll tell me that the iOS platform has been successfully compiled. And then it'll give me my prompt back. It takes a few minutes. It's really doing some heavy duty work right now as it's building an actual app. There we go. So now we have built Android and iOS apps, and I have them here in my folder. Now, to test, you can either hook in a device and test the app, or if you have the appropriate emulator on your machine, you can test that way. So I'm going to issue another short command here, which is Cordova emulate Android. And this is going to take a couple of minutes to load if that works on my current configuration. I've had some problems with my Mac, as some of you guys know. So if this works, we'll get a pretty interesting result here. And you can see down here, because I have the emulator installed, and of course you'll do some of this on your homework, there it's loaded this emulator 64 ARM. What it's doing is it's loading an actual Android emulator onto my machine, which you'll be able to see in a minute. Now, this is a very kind of long, intensive process that takes it takes longer than it probably should. It's easier to test on an actual device, but failing having an actual device, this is a good way to do it. Here you can see now it's actually loaded this generic device, which is kind of emulating a Nexus 7. And because it's an emulator, what it's really doing is it's building a device and all the internals on my desktop. So you see it's loading just like an Android device would, but it's much, much slower. So, but it's building this application on an actual Android emulator, and this is a good way to test. So no, the emulator, it's downloaded, Nicole. It just takes really long to build because what it does is you can do different configurations in the emulator. And again, when you guys look at the homework tomorrow, you'll kind of it'll take you through doing some of this. But the emulator is part of the Android SDK. Which is the Android Software Development Kit. And this is just slow. If you have an Android device, you're much better off taking a USB cable and hooking it into your machine. iOS builds a little bit faster, but I wanted to show you the Android first. And this is going to run that sample app that we have inside the application. While this is loading, this will take a couple more minutes. Let me note, too, that if you guys want to brush up on your HTML, JavaScript, etc., um, I really recommend that you do that. This is a fairly intensive class, and it's only going to help you to be able to understand the HTML, JavaScript, etc. well. All right, so it's giving us kind of the generic now Android screen, and let's see here. I think we got to unlock it still. Let's see if I'm not sure if it installed our app yet. There we go. So now it's going to try and run the actual app that we've installed. And there you go. That's the whole app. That's all it does is say device is ready. Wasn't that worth the wait? Quick recommendation is once you've got your Android emulator up and running, don't close it because it'll go through that whole process again. Now, if I want to, unfortunately, here, while it's still running on the emulator, my command line is tied up because this is still running. But what I can do is on the command line, I can simply open a new command line shell in the folder that I want. So let's move to that hello folder. Right now, I'm in Mark Lassoff. So I'm going to move to the desktop. And on the desktop, I've got that hello world folder. So now I'm in that. PWD shows me my path. And now I'm going to move into the hello folder. And now I'm in my project folder again. So now, and I hope I don't crash here because there's a lot of computing power I'm going to use. I'm going to say, we've already compiled the Android. So let's say Cordova run iOS. So this would, you can see here, I've got deployment problem where it doesn't work. See, but it gives me this error. iOS deploy was not found. Please download, build, and install version 1.04 or greater from this. Or, well, I'm just going to run this little command here. One of the things about PhoneGap is they are all the time, um, they're all the time improving it. Well, that didn't work very well, did it? Oh, sudo. They're all the time improving it, and sometimes when they improve it, things immediately go out of date. So it's not the easiest sometimes platform to wrestle with, but the results can be very satisfying if you put in the time. All right, so I'm going to put this one over here. This is kind of getting my iOS ready. We'll take a look at that later if that finishes. We've got Android going, so let's just go with that. So let's go back to the actual code. So in my www folder, here's index.html, and there's Sublime Text. So most of this code that they give you here originally is garbage. It's just for that sample app that they have in there. So nobody gets confused. Let me get rid of everything on my screen that we don't need at this moment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into what you really need. So from here, this whole comment at the beginning is license information. I would leave it in there. It doesn't affect anything. It's here in comments. It's ignored. We're going to get rid of the link to the style sheet. And I'll send you a template for this so you don't have to remember this or watch the video again. All of this, and essentially what you're left with is this template. And this is the template I like to use. So it's just here, minus this disclaimer at the beginning, which frankly you can get rid of. This is the whole template for every application. And you don't even have to understand this to use it. This template simply sets up the HTML for your application. Now here in the body, we can issue any HTML tags that we want to, and they'll be part of the application. Brad, thank you for answering that. Yeah, I am using Sublime 2 as my text editor. Let me point out, you can use any text editor, including Notepad on a PC. Sublime is free. Brackets is another one that I use. So you can use either. And again, it'll guide you through, when you do the homework, it's going to guide you through exactly what you need and what you should do. So the homework is really where you're going to learn. You may want to watch the video again that we're doing, but the homework is really where you're going to learn. All right, so let's go ahead. H1, hello world. P, this is the first application from 6 weeks to the App Store from LearnToProgram Media. Yeah, Nicole, I got your email. I think you emailed me about that earlier today, the brackets crashing. You're the second person who's told me that. I've gone ahead, actually, I contacted my friend at Adobe today, and they're looking at it. So believe it or not, your complaint got all the way up to Adobe. So hopefully they'll have a solution soon, and we'll see what's going on with that. Okay, so now again, I'm just doing a static HTML page. I'm going to add to this just one thing to make it a little dynamic. So I'm going to add a button here. All right, so I'm going to add a button here. And this button simply says push me. Now, again, we can test in the local browser. We can test in the local browser and see what our silly little application will look like. So right now it looks like this. I'm just going to add to this a little script that will make the button work. Now, JavaScript is the primary language with which you'll be building these. So let's add here just a little bit of code. Even if you don't understand this, all this is going to do is when that button is pushed, it's going to give us a message. So I write in pure JavaScript. A lot of people will use jQuery, which is a JavaScript library that makes your life easier. Don't worry too much if you don't understand this stuff yet. This is all like part of the pieces you can put together to make your app. So, and I'll explain how this works in just a second. Let me finish the code. Okay, so what this says is when the page loads into the mobile device, run this function. This function gets the button called My Button, which is this button, and says when that button is clicked, run a function called Message Me. That's all you have to understand. So the Message Me function is right here. So again, when the page loads, we're going to get this button, the button you saw on the screen earlier. We're going to listen on that button for a click event. And when that button is clicked, we'll run a function called Message Me. And all Message Me is going to do is alert out, hello world, interactivity is cool. So now we have an interactive app. I'm going to test here on the browser. You can only test some things on the browser, but this is simple enough where we're able to. Push me. And it doesn't work because I forgot to save. Let's save. Let's try it again. Push me. Or it doesn't work for another reason. Let's see. Function message me. Window onload equals function. Boy, I'd hate to have something I couldn't fix. Let's check real quick here, see if I've got some error that I made that's quickly fixable. Windows is not defined. Line 10. Typo. Should be window.onload. Okay. Happens to the best of us. Push me. There's our alert. Push me. There's our alert. So that's the interactive application. Not very exciting. But I only did it in like a minute and a half. So there's our app. There's our HTML. We got rid of all the stuff we don't need. We actually now don't need these folders either. So we're left with this HTML, which again is pretty simple, and this config file, which I'll talk about at some point. Now, let's go ahead and we've changed our app, right? Because right now on the device, this is our app, but I've changed it. I've changed the code to change the app. So let's go ahead and bring back our command line and let's build a different app. We've got two command lines going for the sake of confusion here. So let's do this. Where is our device? Here it is. So now on this works just like a regular device. And I can, for example, use the web browser here if I want to. Now, one of the problems with the actual kind of command line running of this is as long as this device is running, I can't use the command line. So what I actually have to do, and this is awful implementation, but it is what it is shut this down, and then my command line releases. But now I'm going to go ahead and build this again with my new code. So we're going to build the app, and then we'll run it again. All right, and Cordova emulate Android. Fortunately, the emulator will load more quickly the second time. And notice my iOS, it looks like still got some errors when we tried to... Nope, it looks like we got what we needed here. So we'll try iOS as well. So there's the emulator. That'll come back in a second, and we'll see the new application. See, it's loading more quickly already. It does take some time. But again, if you have an Android device, just a question, here in the chat, what kind of devices do you guys have? Let me know. It might be helpful to know what you have, if any. If you don't have a device, that's fine. You can still complete the class, but just, make a sandwich while the emulator is running. iPad, iPhone. Yeah, the Apple devices, I'll put it in the documentation, are a little more difficult because, Nicole, that'll work, are a little more difficult because you have to have a developer's license to test. So I'll give you some testing stuff too. And also, while this is loading, there's another tool that is just awesome for creating these types of apps. And I'll be talking about this later in the course, but something you might want to download while you have the chance. And nobody's really talking about this yet, but I think it's going to be big, is Intel's XDK. It's an app from Intel. And again, we're not going to use it till later on in the course, but something I highly recommend that you get it. This is called XDK. I'll put that in the notes to download that. What it is, it's a full development environment for the actual for building these apps, and I'll show you what's cool about it here in a sec. I have too many things running. All right, so let's see the results here in Android. That'll take just a second. Oh, come on. I'm trying to do too many things at once and talk about too many things at once. Looks like Android's slowly building our app. Here we go. So this is XDK. And it's got a fully integrated environment. Like I said, I don't want you using this yet, but in here we can write our code. This is some of the code for this particular app that I've been working on. We can emulate different devices. So here's the iPad. Here's the iPhone 5 emulating our app. Here's the, let's say, Samsung Galaxy S emulating our app. Here's the Nexus 7. This is XDK I'm showing you. So we'll be using this later, but here's the cool thing about this. It has a cloud build, no matter what you're using, that can build all of these different types of apps. So iOS, Tizen, Amazon, Android, Nook, Cordova, Crosswalk, Windows 8 Store, Windows 8 Phone, Cordova for Windows 8, Cordova for iOS, web app, Chrome, and Facebook. So we're going to be using that later in the course. So Ralph has my building an app for LearnToProgram.tv. I'm actually building here. I don't want to talk too much about this. I'm building an app that uses an XML to display our entire course. So this is just for the Ajax. So this would take the whole Ajax course and basically use this to display the content for the course, so someone could go through the course on a mobile app. So that's what I'm working on. But anyway, that's XDK. All right, so that's coming later in the course. Here's the application I just developed. Push me. And there's our alert. So there it is, distributed to iOS. Now, I don't know, again, because I don't know what I have installed for Android. I don't know what I have installed for iOS. Let's try it in iOS and see if I get any result. I may or may not. Right now I have iOS on the right, and yeah, I got an error. Oh, well. By next time I'll have my iOS running. I didn't have time to configure my application too much. All right. Well, we're at the end of our time together for today anyway. So just to review real quick, we went through creating the basic phone gap application, the different parts of it, modifying it, deploying it, etc. You will get tomorrow a homework assignment which takes you through all of these processes, which are absolutely important for you to learn. There's going to be some, I guarantee for some of you, some mechanical frustration this first week, but please, please, please push through it. Use me as a resource. I'll be happy to help as I can. To get this going. And once you get it going, it's actually a fairly pleasant to use and easy to use environment. So then next week we'll get to having create some apps with some interactivity. We'll go over the HTML more specifically, and then in future weeks the CSS, the JavaScript, etc., to start creating some pretty cool apps. All right, so that's it for this week. Again, I apologize. I'm a little tired this week. Next week, hopefully, I won't have so many mishaps. But anyway, we got through everything we need to get through. Check your email tomorrow for the homework and other materials. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next week. Same time, same bat channel. And be in touch in the meantime. Bye-bye.